Most motorcycle engines do not fail on the road, they fail slowly in the garage from neglect between rides. The good news is it is almost entirely preventable. Spend just 15 minutes each month on a simple maintenance routine, and you could avoid costly repairs while dramatically extending your engine's life. Stay until the end, because the final habit is the one even experienced riders often overlook. Number 15. Never let it sit on stale fuel. Here is the habit most riders never think about, and it wrecks engines without you ever throwing a leg over the bike. If yours is going to sit more than 2 or 3 weeks, you cannot leave it half full of pump gas. Modern fuel is loaded with ethanol, and ethanol pulls moisture straight out of the air. In a vented tank with a lot of empty surface area, that fuel starts breaking down in as little as 30 days, turning into a varnish that gums up your pilot jets and clogs passages thinner than a human hair. The fix is insultingly simple. If the bike is sitting, fill the tank to push the air out, add fuel stabilizer, and run the engine for 5 minutes so the treated fuel reaches the carbs or injectors. A bottle of stabilizer costs less than a fast food meal. A carb clean from varnish runs $300 to $500 at a shop. But there is something most riders get completely wrong about how they start that bike. And this one, we are all guilty of. Quick reminder, if this is already useful, tap subscribe. But the deeper you look, the more interesting it becomes. Number 14. Use the right oil and change it on time, not on mileage. This is where car advice and motorcycle advice split hard. On most bikes, your engine oil also bathes the transmission gears, and on a wet clutch bike, the clutch plates themselves. So you can't pour in just any bottle. Car oils labeled energy conserving contain friction modifiers that make a wet clutch slip, glaze over, and die. You need oil rated J, ASO, or MA2. That rating exists specifically for motorcycles with shared engine transmission clutch oil, and change it on time, not just on miles. A bike ridden hard in short weekend bursts builds moisture and fuel dilution in the oil even at 800 miles, and sheared down oil loses its film strength right where your cam lobes and gears need it. Last spring, a rider brought in a Yamaha with rough shifting and a notchy clutch. Sure, he needed a transmission rebuild. The real problem? 2 years on the same oil because he barely rode it. That $40 change nearly cost him a $1,500 teardown. But there's an overlooked part quietly straining your engine every ride, and most riders never touch it. Can you guess what it is? But the next position belongs to a true classic. Number 13. Keep the drive chain clean, lubed, and correctly tensioned. A neglected chain does not just wear out. It actively damages your engine. A dry, rusty, or over-tight chain creates enormous drag that loads the output shaft and countershaft seal directly. Overtension is worst of all. It puts constant pull on the gearbox bearings and can wipe out the countershaft seal, letting your engine oil leak straight out. Run it dry and tight long enough, and you are not buying a $90 chain. You are splitting cases for bearings and seals, easily $800 and up. The ritual takes 10 minutes. Monthly or every 500 miles, clean the chain, lube the inner run while it is warm, and check slack against your manual, usually 1 inch to 1.5 inches at the tightest point as you rotate the wheel. 2 months ago, a rider ignored a chain so tight it sang on the highway. The countershaft seal let go, dumped oil onto his rear tire mid-corner, and turned a $15 can of lube into a near crash and a $700 repair. And the next habit is the cheapest thing you can do for your motor, yet almost nobody does it right. And the next entry might surprise a lot of people. Number 12. Don't lug the engine. Ride it in the right RPM range. Short, gentle, low RPM riding feels kind to your engine. You're actually starving it. Motorcycle engines, especially high-revving 4-valve designs, are built to live in the upper half of their rev range. Constantly short-shifting and lugging the motor in a high gear loads the pistons and big end bearings while spinning too slowly to splash oil onto the cylinder walls. Carbon builds on the valves and rings, and the engine chokes on its own deposits. The fix costs nothing and is honestly fun. At least once a week, take the bike up through the range on a safe stretch, not redline abuse. Just a couple of strong, controlled pulls to about 2/3 of redline. It scrubs carbon off the valves, keeps the ring sealing, and burns moisture out of the oil and exhaust. Skip it for years and you'll wonder why a low-mileage bike feels gutless and fouls plugs. And moving on to a habit riders ignore until they're stranded, running the tank too low. Moving forward, we arrive at another unexpected contender. Number 11. Don't ride the tank to empty. On a car, this is a fuel pump problem. On a bike, it's that and more. Many motorcycles, especially fuel-injected sport and adventure bikes, run the fuel pump inside the tank, cooled and lubricated by the very fuel around it. Ride near empty over and over and you leave that pump exposed, running hot, sucking up the sediment and water that settle at the bottom. On carbureted bikes, running dry pulls that same junk straight into your jets. A fuel pump on a modern bike isn't cheap, commonly $300 to $700 with labor, and that's if it doesn't take the injectors too. The smarter move, treat a quarter tank as your real empty and refuel there. It keeps the pump submerged, cool, and fed clean fuel from above the sediment line. Your tank isn't meant to be run dry. It's meant to stay full enough to protect what lives inside it. But if all this sounds like a lot, here's the routine that ties it together. One thing you do monthly and forget until next month. Next on the list is a name you might recognize. Number 10. The once-a-month walkaround. Engines don't just wear out, they get neglected to death. The easiest defense is a once-a-month walkaround under 5 minutes. Put the bike on a stand or hold it upright and just look at it slowly, top to bottom. That's it, but don't let the simplicity fool you, because this is where you catch cheap problems before they turn expensive. You're looking for weeping fork seals, oil seepage around the cylinder base and valve cover, a chain gone dry since last month, darkened brake fluid, and any nut or bolt backing out from vibration. And vibration backs them out constantly on a motorcycle. A rider messaged us in a panic about a horrible new rattle. A walkaround would have caught it 3 weeks earlier. One loose engine mount bolt, a 2-minute fix, slowly hammering the mount oval. The walkaround is the foundation. But to really stretch engine life, you need the fluids rule, because ignoring it is the #1 silent killer of motorcycle engines. Now let us move to the next entry on the list. Number 9. The fluids rule. Every engine runs on fluids, but a motorcycle is more fluid sensitive than almost anything you own because there's so little of everything. Many bikes hold barely 2 to 3 quarts of oil total, no big reservoir to hide a problem in, so a small loss becomes a catastrophe fast. Oil, coolant, brake and clutch fluid. Check them and the bike runs forever. Ignore them and it suffocates in one hot afternoon. Start with oil, which on most bikes does triple duty for engine, gearbox, and clutch. Check it upright on the center stand, not on the side stand, which gives a false high reading that fools riders into running a quart low. Dark, gritty, or burnt smelling, change it now. Then coolant if you're liquid cooled. Even those bikes overheat fast in stop-and-go traffic when it's low, and air-cooled engines have almost zero margin. Last summer, a rider on a liquid-cooled twin sat in slow traffic with a coolant level he'd never checked. The bike cooked, warped the head, and handed him a $2,800 bill for a fluid that takes 30 seconds to inspect. Now here's where it gets interesting, because most riders think AIR plays no role. On a motorcycle, neglecting airflow wears an engine faster than bad oil. Number 8. Check the air filter and never block the cooling fins. And this is where things take a turn. 8. Your air filter is the lungs of the engine. On a bike, it works harder because the engine revs higher and breathes more aggressively per cc than a car. A filter packed with dust and bug debris throws off your air-fuel ratio and forces incomplete combustion, carbon on the valves, fouled plugs, lost power. A rider who'd never opened the airbox on a 3-year-old bike had a filter so clogged it was starving the engine into a stumble he'd been blaming on bad gas. But bikes have a second airflow killer cars don't: your cooling fins. If you ride air-cooled, those fins are your cooling system. Caked in mud, road grime, or chain lube fling, they can't shed heat, and an air-cooled engine that can't dump heat will cook its top end. Keep them clean, especially if you ride dirt or sit in traffic. A $25 filter and a few minutes with a brush can save a top-end rebuild north of $2,000. Go check your filter and fins after this, and tell me in the comments what you found. And the next part is even more dangerous when neglected: your cables, hoses, and lines. Now we move to something completely different. Number 7. Inspect cables, hoses, and lines. These are the unsung heroes, constantly flexed and heat cycled every ride. And on a bike, they are fully exposed instead of tucked under a hood. A throttle cable fraying inside its housing can stick open at exactly the wrong moment. A safety issue, not just a bill. Coolant hoses on a liquid-cooled bike bake inches from the cylinder, and when one splits, you lose all your coolant and overheat in under a minute. Brake and clutch lines harden and crack with age. A rider ignored a small bulge in a radiator hose one season too long. It let go on the highway, dumped the coolant, and warped the head before he could pull over. A $20 hose that became a 4-figure repair. Once a month, run your fingers along the throttle and clutch cables for stiffness and fraying. Squeeze the coolant hoses for soft or rock-hard spots, and check brake lines for cracks where they flex. Underfairing heat cooks rubber constantly, which is why these parts fail under load while riding, never while parked. Ever had a cable or hose let go? Share it below. Next up, the part that decides whether your bike even wakes up in the morning. The next entry shows just how far this idea can go. Number 6. Clean and protect the battery and connections. Your battery seems like a non-issue until the morning you thumb the starter and get a sad click. On a fuel-injected bike, it's worse. Low voltage scrambles the ECU and confuses the injection, making the bike run rough or refuse to start even when the engine's perfect. Corroded or loose terminals force the charging system to overwork, and motorcycle vibration loosens connections far faster than any car. Most dead battery calls aren't dead batteries at all. They're bad connections and chronic undercharging from a bike that sits. Monthly, check the terminals are clean and tight. Hit corrosion with baking soda, water, and a wire brush, and confirm the small ground strap to the engine is solid, because a bad ground mimics a dead battery perfectly. Best of all, keep it on a smart maintenance charger whenever the bike sits over a week. A $30 tender outlasts 3 batteries killed by sitting flat, and that connects to something riders never link to engine health, where the rubber meets the road. And then there is this. Number 5. Check tire pressure every single ride. On a car, low pressure mostly costs fuel. On a motorcycle, it's a safety and engine issue at once, and you should check it far more than monthly. An underinflated tire balloons. Its contact patch generates massive heat and forces the engine to fight constant rolling resistance. But the real danger is that a hot, underinflated tire can fail at speed, and on 2 wheels, that's catastrophic. Motorcycle tires also lose pressure faster because they hold so little air to begin with. A rider chasing a vague, "the bike feels lazy and thirsty" complaint had simply let his pressures drop a few pounds per square inch over a couple of months. Topping them to spec brought back the mileage and the sharp steering he thought he'd lost. Check pressure cold before you ride, against the number on your chain guard or in the manual, not the maximum printed on the tire sidewall. It saves fuel, saves engine effort, and genuinely keeps you alive. Do it this week and comment what you found. And speaking of small signals, the next habit is about the warnings your bike gives you out loud. But that is only part of the story. Number 4. Listen for new noises and learn your valve train. Your bike has a voice, and because you sit right on top of the engine with no hood between you and it, You'll hear trouble earlier than any car driver if you're paying attention. A new top-end tick, a deeper knock under acceleration, a cam chain whine that wasn't there last month. These are the engine asking for help before it fails. The big one on many bikes is valve clearance. As the engine wears, clearances drift, and too tight is the dangerous direction. A valve that can't fully close burns its seat and edge, and you lose compression and eventually the valve itself. The first symptom is often a faint change in how the engine sounds and idles. A rider brought in a bike with a slight new tick he'd ignored, a valve gone tight, weeks from burning. The clearance check that would have caught it costs a fraction of the head repair that almost followed. Monthly, kill the noise around you, start the bike, and just listen as it idles, revs, and settles. And learn your manual's valve check interval. The maintenance most riders skip until it's too late. Because if noises are your engine whispering, leaks are your bike quietly bleeding out. And this is where the list gets serious. Number 3, look underneath and at the fork seals. One of the easiest, most skipped habits is simply looking under and around the bike once a month. With so little fluid on board, a leak a car could shrug off can run a motorcycle engine dry shockingly fast. Oil under the engine could be a leaking countershaft seal, a tired valve cover gasket, or a base gasket. Ignore it, and you can run the sump dry and seize the motor, which on most bikes is game over. Coolant pooling under a liquid-cooled bike points to a hose, the water pump, or its weep hole warning that the pump seal is failing, and an overheated motorcycle warps its head fast. Then there's the leak unique to bikes, fork seals. Oil on your fork tubes drips straight onto your front brake and kills your stopping power. A safety failure as much as a maintenance one. Park on clean cardboard overnight and read the drips in the morning. Even a faint smell of fuel or coolant is a red flag. Catching a leak here is free and takes seconds. And while leaks are critical, there's one more fluid habit just as important, the one most riders forget exists. But the story does not end there. Number 2, check the final drive, clutch, and brake fluid. Most riders obsess over engine oil and forget the other fluids keeping the drivetrain alive. On a shaft drive bike, there's gear oil in the final drive that almost nobody changes. And when it cooks or runs low, you grenade an expensive final drive unit. On a bike with a hydraulic clutch, that fluid degrades and absorbs water like your brakes, making the clutch drag, cooking it, and stressing the gearbox. And brake fluid is the one everyone neglects. It's hygroscopic, meaning it pulls in water over time, and waterlogged fluid boils under hard braking and corrodes calipers and ABS units from the inside. A rider convinced he had a failing master cylinder just had brake fluid untouched for years. Dark, water-saturated, ruining parts. Monthly, eyeball the brake and clutch reservoirs. Healthy fluid is clear to light gold, and dark or murky means it's overdue. And once your fluids are sorted, there's one final test you can do right in your garage to catch problems before they ever leave the driveway. That might sound impressive, but the next one is even more surprising. Number 1, the cold start and warm-up listen. Engines are like people. You can tell almost everything from how they wake up and breathe. That's why a monthly cold start observation is the smartest habit you can build. Think of it as a physical exam you give your bike at home, where you catch the subtle stuff first. With the bike on a stand and in neutral, start it cold and watch and listen. A healthy engine catches quickly and settles into a steady idle within seconds. Notice what most riders never do. A top end that rattles for several seconds before quieting can mean a worn cam chain tensioner, a known engine killer on many bikes, because a failed tensioner lets the cam chain go slack and skip, bending valves. Watch the exhaust on that first start. A faint puff that clears is normal, but lingering blue smoke means oil past the rings or valve seals, and white smoke that won't clear can mean coolant in the chamber. And critically, Never rev a cold engine. Let it idle and warm so the oil, pooled in the sump overnight, can climb to the top end before you load it. This test costs nothing, takes under 5 minutes, and a strange cold start sound is your single earliest warning of expensive trouble. If you like uncovering hidden truths, subscribe and join us again soon.